Yes, what's the story, lads? Welcome back to GAA Fan TV. My name is Aaron. Hope you're all keeping well. And this is the All-Ireland Football Championship predictions and preview. My predictions and preview. And we're going to run through the entire championship, speak about all the big winners in the various different provincial championships, speak about all the big games, and speak about who I think will win the All-Ireland in 2020. And you know what? Thank fuck the championship is back. Get in. And look, listen, obviously, you know, every 10 minutes things are changing in the GAA. Every 10 minutes it looks like the All-Ireland Championship is going to be cancelled. You have teams potentially dropping out. You have XYZ happening left, right and centre. And obviously in this video there's a lot of if, buts and maybes. And, you know, this is just a bit of fun, you know, don't take my opinion too seriously. You know, I'm certainly no expert when it comes to, you know, this kind of stuff. This is just a bit of a laugh. You know, I am a GAA fan, obviously given the name of the channel. And, you know, that's what I do. I give my opinions as a fan and I give my opinions as how I see them. So, yeah, look, listen, you know, this is just a bit of fun. And obviously, you know, it's very hard to predict matches and games when we haven't seen, you know, an inter-county football match in about 6 to 7, 8 months. So look, listen, obviously these are my opinions, but of course if you lads do disagree, feel free to let me know down in the comments below why. But anyway, let's jump straight into it. And look, listen, this is my second time recording this video because the first time I recorded it I spoke way too much and it was like 45 minutes to an hour long. So we're just going to cut through all, you know, the bullshit really here, and we are going to go straight into it, and we'll talk about the Ulster Football Championship, and I suppose who will win the Ulster Football Championship, and I think it will be Donegal. Look, listen, obviously Tyrone play Donegal in the first game, and that will be a very tough game, but you know, Tyrone don't have Cathal McShane, he's injured. Colm Kavanagh has retired. Darren McCurry was even coming out saying the championship should be cancelled, and you know, is he going to participate in the championship this year? It's probably unlikely. And look, Tyrone do have Conor McKenna back from Australia, and obviously Matty Donnelly's back on the side as well, and they will be tough for Donegal. Like, there'll only be a couple of points in it, but I think Donegal and Declan Bonner know how to get the job done. Declan Bonner has been there, he's done it 2 years in a row, looking to achieve what Jim McGuinness has never done in the All-Ireland football scene with Donegal, and what a massive achievement it would be. And when you look at the form of Patrick McBrearty for Kilcar and the Donegal Football Championship, you look at Oisín Gallen, you know, what a talent he is adding into the team. You've already got experienced veterans in there like Michael Murphy and Kieran Thompson, for example. So yeah, I think Donegal will beat Tyrone, and I think they'll win the semi-final as well. And you know what I'm going to say next might surprise some people, but I think it will be Derry in the semi-final and not Armagh. Look, listen, Armagh, very talented team all across the board. A lot of very good young players. Certainly in the next 4 to 5 years, in my opinion, they will win an Ulster title, and they could even potentially challenge for an All-Ireland. But I look at them right now and I think, look, listen, they do have a very talented forward line in Rian O'Neill. You've Oisín O'Neill, Stephen Campbell, Conor Turbitt looked fantastic earlier in the league. But I think defensively and in the midfield they're a little bit weak. And I think Derry, you know, with Rory Gallagher in there, with the fact that he's such a defensive manager in many ways, he's a great record against Armagh, I think he'll be able to cause the upset. You know, he'll get men behind the ball, they'll play a blanket defence, they'll play a sweeper, and they'll just make it very difficult for Armagh. You know, when Rian O'Neill doesn't get service, I think Armagh struggle a bit. I think we've seen that when they lost to Laois in the second game in the National League, and I think the same will happen here. I think Derry will edge out a 1 to 2 point victory over Armagh. And you know, look, listen, Armagh's training's been massively disrupted by COVID as well. I know Derry probably the same, but I think Derry will be able to cause a massive shock here and get a win over Armagh. And I think Donegal would beat Derry. I think Donegal would have too much. You know, if Derry try play Donegal in that kind of same game, I think Donegal will be able to see through it and get past Derry. I think it will be Monaghan on the other side of the draw, you know, who will get to the final. And look, listen, I don't discount all the other sides there. I think Cavan are a different team compared to last year. You've no Cian Mackey, you've no Darragh McVeety. I know Oisín Pearson and Stephen Murray look quite good in the league. But I think Cavan will have a particular focus on those 2 remaining league games. Massive pressure on them to potentially get promoted. It'd be a huge achievement if they could do it. Monaghan, for me, looking very good indeed this year, you know, especially in the Monaghan Football Championship. You had players like Darren Hughes, Conor McCarthy. You know, Conor McCarthy, man of the match in, you know, numerous matches that he played in. Darren Hughes, fantastic in midfield as well. And not to mention the experience of Conor McManus, you know, one of the best forwards in the country. So I think Monaghan will be able to get past Cavan in this game. I don't think they've much focus in the league as well. You know, they'll be able to kind of rotate players and just get up to full fitness without really having to put, you know, the full brakes on. And yeah, you know, they'll play Antrim then, which I think they'll win quite comfortably. Look, Antrim will have massive focus on the league. You know, they're massive chance of getting promoted to Division 3, the first time since 2017 for them. So I think Monaghan will get past Antrim. I think Down will get past Fermanagh. I think Fermanagh have had a lot of issues behind the scenes with COVID, obviously potentially up to 10 players potentially not participating, and I think Down would have won this regardless anyway. You know, will a lot of the Kilcoo lads get involved with Down this year? Now, the fact that the Club Football Championship isn't interfering with the Ulster Football Championship, we'll have to wait and see. But I think Down will get past Fermanagh, and I think they will cause problems for Monaghan in the semi-finals as well. But I think overall, I think Monaghan will have a bit too much for Down. A potential banana skin for Monaghan in some ways. You know, Monaghan have an awful habit of beating the big sides in Ulster and losing to the lesser teams, like in 2018 when they beat Tyrone and then lost to Fermanagh. So, look, listen, I think it will be Monaghan and Donegal in the final, and it could go either way. You know, there's a lot of if, buts and maybes here. Will there be injuries involved? There probably will be. Will the winter conditions take a massive toll on numerous matches? I think they will, and I think it will be close, but I think Donegal physically will just be a little bit stronger, having played a game less as well. I think they'll be a little bit more prepared. They've more options from the bench, in my opinion, as well, and I think Monaghan will potentially have injuries. But what I would say about the Ulster Football Championship in general is that this is the one championship, in my opinion, where probably anyone could really win it, because in all the other provincial championships, you know, you have one overriding team who, you know, the obvious favourites like Kerry and Munster, maybe Galway and Connacht and Dublin and Leinster. But in Ulster, it's definitely wide open. But I do think Donegal will have too much for Monaghan, and they will become the Ulster champions. And then, of course, in Leinster, and look, listen, obviously, I think most people will know that Dublin will win the Leinster Football Championship. And that's not me being a cocky, arrogant Dublin fan, despite what some people might think. But I think it's fairly obvious that they are going to win the Leinster Football Championship. Will they win the All-Ireland and make it 6 in a row? We'll get onto that in just a moment. But I do look at the Leinster Football Championship and think, you know, obviously the quality is just not quite there in this championship. You know, if you took Dublin out of Leinster, you'd probably have the weakest provincial football championship, in my opinion. And look, listen, same could happen here. You know, when you take Dublin out of there, anyone could kind of beat anyone, in my opinion. You know, obviously Meath and Kildare will probably be the most likely two teams to contest one of the semi-finals. Kildare have been in transition a little bit under Jack O'Connor though. Daniel Flynn, of course, came back from Australia and probably hasn't hit the heights that we'd expect. They have a young talent in there in Jimmy Hyland who hasn't quite hit the standards just yet. But you do have informed players like Paddy Brophy and Kevin Flynn in midfield, very experienced midfielder for the Kildare team who could cause problems. And look, listen, I think Kildare in 2-3 years down the line, when they bring through some of the players from the under-20s and from their mind, you know, and kind of promote a lot of their younger players, I think they will become a bit of a force in Leinster in terms of becoming the second best side to Dublin, or potentially even challenging Dublin for a Leinster title quite competitively. But I think Meath will have enough in this game against Kildare, in my opinion. You know, James Conlon, Daithí McGowan, they have a lot of young players coming through, but I like what Andy McEntee's doing with Meath. He's bringing through the right players at the moment. He has the right structures in place in terms of underage setup, and they definitely are moving in the right direction. And I think Meath will just have a bit more than Kildare on the day. I think there's more focus for Kildare in Division 2 compared to Meath in Division 1. I think for Kildare, getting relegated from Division 2 would be, you know, an absolute travesty in many ways. But I think for Meath going down to Division 2, it won't make that much of a difference because, you know, the Tier 1, Tier 2 setup wouldn't apply in that circumstance. They'd still be in the Tier 1 anyway for next year. But yeah, so look, listen, it will be interesting, but I think Meath will have too much for Kildare. In terms of some of the other counties there, Offaly could potentially spring a surprise and beat Kildare, you know, in the early rounds. You know, you wouldn't discount it. Bernard Allen looked very good in the league, but yeah, you know, John Maughan, very experienced manager, could potentially do something there, but I couldn't really see that happening. And as for the rest of them, you know, Wicklow, Wexford or Carlow, can't quite see it happening. Carlow, change in management, probably going to change their playing style. If they go back to a defensive setup, they might be able to cause a few problems, but I think I can't see them doing anything, in my opinion. And same for Wicklow or Wexford. I think Wicklow will probably beat Wexford. I can't see either of them beating Meath anyway. The other side of the draw, obviously Westmeath playing Dublin. Very unfortunate for Westmeath taking on Dublin. You know, Westmeath, if they're on the other side of the draw, could have been one of the dark horses to make a Leinster final. Very talented defence, in my opinion, with Bodu Sayen there. Very talented attack, you know, experienced forward in John Heslin, who's been a part of the Westmeath team for, you know, God knows how long. And you've obviously got Luke Loughlin, who looked very bright in the league. So, you know, Westmeath are moving in the right direction. I think they'll have a massive focus on avoiding relegation from Division 2. I think that would be a big achievement for them. And they will be competitive with Dublin. A lot of people think Dublin will win by 10 to 15 points. I actually think this could be 5 or 6 points. I think Westmeath can have this game a lot closer than people think, just with the fact that it's the first game of the championship, and I think Westmeath will be quite defensive, and in the winter conditions I think it'll be harder to break defensive teams down than it would have been before. You then obviously have you know, Laois, Longford and Louth. Louth very much, you know, down and out as it seems at the moment. You know, can't seem to buy a win at the moment, and I can't see how they'll get past Longford. Longford have had a lot of disruption in their county football championship as well, though. You know, you had one of the clubs who was banned for quite a number of times, so it held the championship up until it got overturned. And yeah, look, listen, there is talented players there at Longford, but again, I think they'll have a massive focus on the league, and they will beat Louth in my opinion. But I think Laois will be able to stop them. Laois bringing through a couple of talented young players this year after obviously losing the Kingston brothers who opted out, and their captain Stephen Atroyd opted out as well. So yeah, I think Laois will play Dublin in the semis, and I think Dublin will be able to see through Laois in that game. And I think overall, you know, Dublin Meath in the Leinster final, but I think Dublin will have too much for Meath. And I suppose if we talk about Dublin for a brief moment, could they be beaten in the All-Ireland Football Championship in the semi-finals versus Donegal? That is the real question here, because look, listen, Dublin have had a lot of players retire. They obviously have a new manager in there. I know Desi Farrell was part of the same kind of school of thought as Jim Gavin. You know, he won a championship at minor level. He was successful at under 20 level as well. And, you know, he's done very well for Dublin, you know, as a whole. You know, he won an All-Ireland in 1995. But it is a different setup. Paul Clark, one of the selectors, not involved with the Dublin team anymore either. And you know, you just wonder, will the same motivation, will the same appetite and hunger that's been there for Dublin in the past, you know, 5 years or so, will it be there this year? You know, when they're 2-3 points behind in tough wintry conditions, will they be able to turn it around? And I do think they'll beat Donegal personally. The reason why I think that is because Donegal, in my opinion, will have played 3 very intense matches, potentially have injuries, probably don't have the same squad depth as Dublin, in my opinion. Dublin will have come through what is essentially almost like a pre-season tournament to them. So I think Dublin will be able, and they will be fitter, they'll be more ready for this game, and they'll already have their eyes on Donegal in the semi-finals. You know, they can already plot their, you know, route to the final pretty comfortably, and I think, you know, their experience will show through, and I think they'll be able to get the job over Donegal. But it certainly will be close, and, you know, who knows what could happen here. And then of course we'll move down south to the Munster Football Championship, Kerry versus Cork. And yeah, I mean, this is a real tough one to call. You know, Cork could potentially pull off an upset here. It's definitely not impossible. We've seen last year when Kerry met Cork that there was only a couple of points in it. We've seen how much Cork have improved in the past couple of years. Some of the players they're bringing through, the likes of Luke Connolly, Cathal O'Mahony coming through, Sean Potter back from injury. They've Kieran Sheehan, of course, who you know, won the All-Ireland back in 2010. You know, he's back in the Cork side as well. They just have a lot of talent all over the pitch. You know, Mark Collins, Brian and Michael Hurley as well. So they have a lot of options, and they will cause Kerry a lot of problems in this game. And this is a tough first game for Kerry, in my opinion, because Kerry, they will want to win the league, you know, and they'll have 2 matches there to win the league. Division 1, they'll finish on top and potentially finish above Galway. Cork will have 2 fairly comfortable matches. You know, they're going to get promoted anyway, even if they win one of their 2 remaining matches, and I think one of their games is against Louth. So I think they'll be, you know, a lot more prepared for this game. But I think overall, you know, I just can't go against Kerry. As much as I'd love to say there's an upset here, as much as I'd love to see Kerry get beat, I cannot see it happening. I can see Kerry winning this game. I think Kerry are just a little bit stronger going forward. I know Kerry's defence at times can be a little bit questionable. We've seen that at times throughout the championship last year. You know, in that game versus Cork, Cork, you know, had so many goal chances and could have easily won that game. But I think Kerry they'll be wise to Cork this year. You know, they had a big risk and a big, you know, they almost blew it last year in the Munster final. I don't think they'll make that mistake again. And when you have David Clifford in the form that he was in for East Kerry, Darren Moynihan looking very bright as well, Paul Gainey looking more or less back to his best. You know, you have a very talented midfield in Jack Barry and David Moran, who, you know, will be even better this year as well. And they do have more options coming in defence as well. Obviously, Jack Sherwood, you know, he'll be their significant defender as well for Kerry. And I just think they'll have a bit too much for Cork. I think in the midfield they'll be a little bit better. And I think going forward they'll have more. They'll just score more than Cork, in my opinion. And I know that's an easy way of putting it. I think it will be high scoring, and it'll probably be one of the most entertaining games of the championship. But yeah, I think Kerry will get past Cork. And in terms of the other side of the draw, I do think it'll be Clare. I think Clare will get to the final here. I know Tipperary have Michael Quinlivan back, and Conor Sweeney's a very talented footballer, but I think Clare have Gary Brennan and Jamie Malone back in the team, and Clare just always seem to be a very organised, well-drilled. They know how to play, they know how to get the job done, and they just seem to be very good at essentially pinching above their weight in many ways. You know, obviously they do have a very talented team, don't get me wrong, but they've done a great job in terms of getting to the level that they're at, considering that Clare is not normally known as a Gaelic football county. You know, to be in Division 2 for a couple of years now, maintaining their status in Division 2, very impressive. And I think they'll have a bit, you know, too much for Tipperary. I think a lot of inconsistencies with Tipperary at times, with changing managers and different things going on. So I fancy Clare to get the job done there. Waterford Limerick, obviously, you know, that could go either way. Both teams, you know, very much on an even par down in Division 4. But I think I think Waterford actually might be able to cause the upset here, because I think Limerick will have such a huge focus on getting promoted to Division 3, and Waterford only played a 1 game as opposed to Limerick playing 2, and that's because London are obviously not participating in the remaining 2 league games. So I think Waterford will be able to cause a shock here. I think they have a few good young players coming through, like Dara Corcoran, for example, who was on the podcast, and Conor Murray, Dylan Geary as well. So I think Waterford will get the victory over Limerick. I don't think they'll beat Clare though. I think Clare will beat Waterford, and then I think Clare will beat Kerry. No, unfortunately not. Kerry will beat Clare. Kerry probably won't even have to be at their best here. You know, I just can't see a shock happening here. Kerry will beat Clare quite comfortably, and it'll be a nice final for them. It'll be a nice preparation for an All-Ireland semi-final. And who will they play in the semi-finals? I think it will be Galway. I think they'll meet Mayo in the final though, and that's not to discount Leitrim or Sligo or Roscommon, who we'll speak about in a moment. Leitrim and Sligo, first of all, massive focus on the league. Sligo can get promoted to Division 3. Leitrim to stay in Division 3 would be massive for them. So I think they'll both have massive focuses on that. And no disrespect, but I don't think Leitrim are going to beat Mayo and Sligo are going to beat Galway. I think they'll be comfortable victories for either of those 2 counties, for both Mayo and Galway. And Mayo versus Roscommon is an interesting one. You know, Roscommon obviously do have the Murtas back. Conor Cox, obviously, very talented forward. Enda Smith, very good as well. They've just so much talented footballers all around in Roscommon, and won the Connacht Championship twice in the past 3 years. Very well drilled, very well organised. Anthony Cunningham brought in a bit more of a defensive setup into them last year. But I think Mayo, I expect to see Mayo in the next couple of years do very well. And, you know, a lot of Dublin fans might laugh when I say that, but I actually think Mayo could potentially challenge for All-Irelands again in the next 3-4 years. I think they have a lot of very talented players coming through at under 20 level. Oisin Mullen, for example, who's broke on the scene. You look at Knockmore winning the Mayo Football Championship. A lot of very good players coming through there as well, like Conal Dempsey, for example. Darren McHale, obviously he's not one of the young guys with Knockmore, but he looked very bright indeed for Knockmore. And, you know, if they involve him in the Mayo Football Championship and he gets a bit of game time, he will be talented as well. And obviously, you know, Brafey looked quite good as well. And Conor O'Shea could be an option in midfield. Aidan O'Shea and Shamey O'Shea, obviously all the O'Sheas, very talented footballers altogether. So I think Mayo will beat Roscommon. I don't think they'll beat Galway though. I think Galway, for me, one of the contenders for the All-Ireland without doubt. You know, definitely in the top 3 in the country in my opinion. The only big question mark for me is, will they have the same form now as to what they had before the lockdown? You know, will they be able to pick back up that momentum? Because it's a massive break and there's been so much that's happened in between then. But I think they will you know, be able to win the Connacht Championship. I think they will have enough over Mayo. You know, they just have so many options now. Shane Walsh in there, you know, Damien Comer, not to mention Ronan Steed, who came in, of course, in midfield, you know, making his debut for Galway at 28 because of what he'd achieved at Corofin. You have options like Dara and Liam Silk coming off the bench as well, who can provide, you know, more options for Galway. So I think Galway will have enough, and I do think they will beat Mayo in the final. And then a Galway-Kerry semi-final, and whew, this is a tough one to call. I'm not going to lie. This will be a very difficult one to call because a part of me thinks that Galway will potentially pull off a massive shock here. You know, Jim McGuinness coming in. Could Galway revert to the blanket defence that they only played as recently in 2018? You know, when Kevin Walsh was in charge, they played the blanket defence quite often. Could they do that against Kerry and completely shake everything up going into the last two matches and potentially win an All-Ireland? I think they could probably do it, you know, if they actually did adopt that style. But yeah, I think Kerry will have a bit too much here over Galway. I think Kerry are just a little bit stronger in midfield. I think Galway, whilst they might be better defensively, I think Kerry's forwards are just very hard to stop, and Stephen O'Brien as well I think will cause massive problems for Galway in this one. It will be very close though. I'm going to be honest, I really cannot split these two. It could go to penalties, it could go to extra time, but I'm going to say Kerry gets the victory over Galway. Yeah, we'll obviously have to wait and see, you know, when the matches get played. I'll be able to give a better opinion on it, but I'm going to say what am I going to say? I'm going to say Kerry beat Galway. And the final, Kerry versus Dublin, just as it was last year. And maybe that's a bit of a boring prediction to predict, you know, the same two teams making the final again. But I don't think it'll be the same outcome. And believe it or not, as a Dublin fan, I think Kerry will win the All-Ireland. And I know a lot of Kerry fans will be happy to hear that. A lot of Dublin fans won't be happy to hear that. But yeah, I just have a sneaky feeling Kerry will be able to get the victory. You know, I think they will have learned a lot from playing the Dubs last year. I think if they get themselves in a similar position to what they done last year when they were in front, you know, in the drawn game, I think they'll be able to see it out this time. Some of their players, you know, a lot of their players are getting better. You know, they're still in their prime, they're still young. And a lot of Dublin's players are aging. You know, Dean Rock, for example, he's getting older. Michael Darragh McCauley's getting older. You have a lot of Dublin players in their 30s and a lot of players retiring at the moment. And, you know, I just think Kerry will just be a little bit more hungrier. And, you know, yeah, I think they'll be able to outdo Dublin. I think not having Hill 16 there as well is massive. You know, Dublin normally have Croke Park, and it is normally an advantage to them in many ways because, you know, the atmosphere that Hill 16 and the Dublin fans generate is far superior to any other, you know, anywhere else in the country. So yeah, I think without having that, I think Kerry will be able to beat Dublin. Yeah, look, listen, very hard one to call. You know, could easily go to extra time, could easily go to penalties. I think Kerry have a lot more options coming off the bench this year as well. You know, Tommy Walsh is there. James O'Donoghue's come back into the setup as well. So, yeah, I think Kerry will have a bit too much for Dublin and win the All-Ireland in 2020. I hope it doesn't happen. I hope Dublin win it. But I do think Kerry will be the All-Ireland champions. But anyway, lads, that's going to be the end of the video. Do let me know down in the comments below if you've enjoyed. Leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. I will be dropping a number of match reactions throughout the entire All-Ireland season in the league as well, you know, so stay peeled for videos, you know, on weekends, especially when matches have finished and whatnot. And yeah, you know, very close to 500 subscribers, so if you could share this out, I would kindly appreciate it. The goal is to hit 1k before the end of the year, and I do think it's still achievable, but if we can get to 500 sooner rather than later, I can't even speak, that would be great. But anyway, yeah, do enjoy, and I'll see you later.